All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to talk about a Nobel Prize-winning idea that tries to explain, well, our entire modern world. And it's all built around a really interesting paradox, that for us to move forward, to create anything new, we first have to destroy something old.
I mean, seriously, think about it. How does progress actually happen? The last 2 centuries have been this absolute explosion of change, unlike anything else in human history. But what's the real engine behind all that? Is it some smooth, steady climb? Or is it something a whole lot messier?
Well, according to the folks who hand out Nobel Prizes in economics, the answer might just lie in a single, incredibly powerful theory. So let's break it down. The prize went to these 3 economists, Philippe Aghion, Peter Howitt, and Joel Mokyr. They got the nod for their work explaining the incredible technological leaps of the last couple hundred years. But, to really get what they did, we've got to rewind a bit and look at the original idea they gave a modern upgrade. And that original idea, which comes from this brilliant economist back in the early 20th century, is the absolute heart of everything we're talking about today. It's called creative destruction. It basically frames capitalism not as some stable, predictable machine, but as this constant churning evolutionary storm. New innovations are always being born, but, and this is the key, their birth comes at a price. They destroy old technologies, old companies, and sometimes even entire industries. The cycle is actually pretty simple when you think about it. First, some groundbreaking new tech emerges. A perfect example is the smartphone. It wasn't just a new phone, its arrival triggered this massive wave of destruction. Suddenly, whole industries built around digital cameras, GPS devices, and MP3 players they were displaced, obsolete. And out of that rubble, a completely new economy evolved, built around things like app stores and mobile data. It's this constant cycle of birth and death. And the intellectual giant behind this was a guy named Joseph Schumpeter. He argued that all this constant churn, this chaos, wasn't a flaw in capitalism. It was the whole point. For Schumpeter, a capitalist economy that wasn't constantly changing and destroying parts of itself it was a contradiction in term. So, if Schumpeter already had the big idea, what did our new Nobel laureates actually do? Well, they took his powerful insight and they gave it a rigorous mathematical framework. They basically built an engine for it that works for the modern era. So, back in the 1990s, Aghion and Howitt came up with what they called Endogenous Growth Theory. Now, endogenous sounds complicated, but it just means from within. Their huge insight was that long-term growth isn't just random. It's not just luck or some external shock. It's actually generated from inside an economy, through things like its investment in education, in research, and its whole culture of innovation. But, and this is a really big but, for this engine to work, the theory says you need a very specific set of conditions. You've got to have free markets. You need open competition. The real driver is supposed to be private ambition. And the government? Well, its role is to be an enabler, not a director. It sets the rules of the road, but it doesn't drive the car. And this is where this elegant theory starts to run into some pretty big real-world challenges. Because those core assumptions, they don't always line up with what we actually see happening around the globe, especially today. This brings us to the critical question: what happens when the state doesn't just play a supporting role? What if the government is the main actor, the one actively driving and directing innovation from the top down? This really sets up 2 competing visions for how you get progress. You have the model our Nobel laureates refined, driven by private incentives and open competition. But then you have this totally different state-led model, which we saw in the Soviet Union, and we see today powerfully in a place like China. That one's all about central planning and government direction. And here is the crucial point. This Nobel-winning model has a major blind spot. It has a really hard time explaining the massive state-directed tech boom we've seen in China. It just goes to show you that geopolitics and different systems of government can completely change the rules of innovation. Which brings us to a really fascinating question about the timing of all this. The theory was developed in the 90s, which was peak free market faith. So why give it a Nobel Prize right now, in a world that looks so incredibly different? Well, this timeline really tells the story. The ideal conditions for creative destruction, that open world order after World War II, the free market Washington consensus of the 90s, all of that is fading. We're now living in an age of rising protectionism where science itself is getting politicized.
The core ideas of global openness and scientific freedom that make this model work are under direct attack. Trade is being used as a weapon, science is getting dragged into political fights, and countries are turning inward. So you start to think, maybe the Nobel Committee wasn't just trying to celebrate an old economic theory. Maybe this was meant to be a direct message, a warning about the dangers we're facing right now. And the takeaway feels like a powerful shot across the bow. It's a reminder that if liberal democracies want to keep innovating, they have to defend the very freedoms, the free markets, the open competition, the scientific independence that fueled their success in the first place. So, to quickly recap our journey here, we started with this really powerful idea of creative destruction. We saw how it's being challenged by these state-led models of innovation, and we've unpacked why giving it a Nobel Prize right now feels like a timely warning for our current era. Which leaves us with one final crucial question. Looking ahead, what's going to drive the next wave of human progress? Is it going to be the chaotic, decentralized engine of free markets, or the focused, powerful ambition of a guiding state hand? The answer is going to define the world we're all building. Thanks for watching.